Welcome to Silent Stories Updates, where every tale whispers a lesson and every moment leaves an echo in your heart. Sit back, relax, and let's dive into today's story, one that begins in the quiet of winter but ends with a storm that no one saw coming. The snow was falling thick that evening, soft flakes drifting through the air like tiny feathers from the sky. My name's Daniel Hayes, and if you told me a year ago that I'd be living in a cabin miles away from the nearest street light, I would have laughed in your face. But there I was, standing outside my small log cabin, coffee steaming in my hands, watching the world disappear under a blanket of white. After everything I'd been through, the debts, the noise, the constant stress, I finally had peace. Real, soul-deep peace. The cabin wasn't much to look at when I bought it. The roof sagged, the porch creaked, and the old stone chimney leaned slightly to one side. But something about it felt right, like it had been waiting for me. I spent months fixing it up, patching walls, chopping wood, and replacing windows. It wasn't luxury, but it was mine. And then one day, that peace shattered. It started with a black SUV parked at the bottom of the hill. 3 people in heavy winter coats were standing outside, taking photos of my cabin. I waved, thinking maybe they were lost hikers or surveyors. Instead, one of them, a woman with sharp glasses and an even sharper voice, walked straight toward me. "Sir," she said, flipping open a clipboard, "you're in violation of Pine Ridge HOA community standards." I blinked, confused. "HOA? There's no HOA up here. You must be mistaken." She smiled tightly. "Every property within Pine Ridge jurisdiction falls under our association. You're required to comply with exterior paint codes, snow fence regulations, and architectural harmony standards." I laughed, out loud, because I thought it was a joke. "Ma'am, I live 3 miles from the nearest paved road. There's no harmony to ruin out here." She didn't laugh back. "Noncompliance will result in fines," she said, handing me a notice before turning away. At first, I shrugged it off. It had to be some kind of clerical error. I lived outside any neighborhood boundaries, no street lamps, no shared utilities, no neighbors. Just snow, trees, and silence. But a week later, another letter came. This time, it was a bill. $1,200 in HOA dues, and if I didn't pay, they threatened legal action. I ignored it. I wasn't part of their little community, and I sure wasn't paying them to tell me how my cabin should look. But then things escalated. One morning, I was patching a roof leak when I heard engines coming up the hill. I stepped outside to find 2 sheriff's deputies standing in the snow, their breath fogged in the cold as one of them said, "Mr. Hayes, we've received complaints from the Pine Ridge Homeowners Association regarding an illegal structure on restricted property." I nearly dropped my hammer. "Illegal? I own this land, sir. They're claiming you're within their jurisdiction. We're just here to make sure everything's in order," the deputy said. That night, I couldn't sleep. I dug through every old document I had: property deeds, survey maps, tax papers. Something wasn't adding up. According to the coordinates, my cabin didn't fall under Pine Ridge boundaries. In fact, it didn't fall under anyone's boundaries. The next morning, I drove into town, snow chains rattling against my truck tires, and went straight to the county land office. The clerk, an older man named Raymond, looked through the records. His eyebrows shot up. "Mr. Hayes," he said, tapping a yellowed map, "your cabin's not in Pine Ridge. It's sitting right on the edge of federal forest land." I stared at him. "Federal forest land? You mean—" He nodded. "Technically, this is government property. The HOA has no jurisdiction there. They can't tell you what color to paint your fence or how to build your cabin. They can't even fine you." I felt a slow grin spreading across my face. After weeks of threats and nonsense, the truth was better than I could have imagined. Not only was I innocent, I was untouchable. When I got back home, I found another SUV parked halfway up the hill. The same woman from before was standing there, fuming. Her SUV was stuck in a snowbank, wheels spinning helplessly. She shouted, "You can't ignore the HOA, Mr. Hayes. We have authority here." I walked down calmly, the snow crunching under my boots. "Actually, you don't," I said. "This cabin isn't on your property. It's on federal land. She scoffed. That's ridiculous. That's when a deep voice came from behind her. No, ma'am, it's not. A tall man in a forest ranger's uniform stepped out from the trees. His name tag read Wallace. He held a folder of documents I'd sent earlier that day. Mr. Hayes is correct, he said. This property lies within U.S. Forest Service jurisdiction. You're trespassing, ma'am. Her face went pale. Trespassing? That's right, Ranger Wallace said. Unless you have written permission from the Forest Service, you need to leave immediately. She muttered something about community integrity and property values, but he wasn't having it. Ma'am, he said firmly, there are no property values here. This is government forest land. You're free to go now. I watched as she got back in her SUV, her tires spinning before finally catching traction and disappearing down the hill. For the first time in weeks, I breathed easy. Over the next few days, the stories spread through the small mountain town. The man who stood up to the HOA on federal land. The cabin that beat the rules, as people called it. I didn't seek attention, but it came anyway. Folks came by to congratulate me or share their own stories of HOA letters gone wild. Some even brought firewood or coffee as thanks for standing up for the little guy. But beneath the laughter and the headlines, there was something deeper, something I'd learned the hard way. You can't buy peace by living under someone else's control. True peace comes from simplicity, from living by your own hands and your own rules. That winter was harsh. Snow piled up to the windows. Some nights, the wind howled so loud it sounded like the mountain itself was alive. But I stayed warm. I built that stove myself, stocked every log of firewood, and sealed every draft. Everything I had, I'd earned. And that feeling, that quiet pride, was worth more than anything money or authority could give me. A few months later, a letter came from the U.S. Forest Service. My first instinct was dread. I thought maybe they'd changed their mind. Maybe I'd have to leave. But when I opened it, I couldn't stop smiling. It was an official offer to lease the land. They wanted me to stay on as a caretaker, maintaining the forest access trails and the surrounding area. It wasn't just legal, it was official. I stood on the porch that evening, letter in hand, and looked out over the frozen hills. The sun was setting, painting the snow gold. I thought about how it all started with a woman and her clipboard, trying to control a place she didn't even understand. And now, here I was, the legal steward of land bigger than any neighborhood could dream of owning. Sometimes I think back to the city, to the noise, the constant pressure to fit into molds, how to dress, what to buy, where to live. And I realize how many of us trade our peace for approval. We build perfect lives inside invisible fences and call it success. But real freedom? It's messy. It's cold. It's raw. It's the sound of snow crunching under your boots at sunrise. And knowing that no one owns the silence but you. The HOA tried to paint me as a troublemaker, a man breaking rules. But all I ever wanted was to live quietly, honestly. To wake up to the sound of wind in the trees instead of car horns in construction. To fix things with my hands instead of arguing through paperwork. To live, not perform. That's what this cabin gave me. Not just shelter, but meaning. And now, every time I light that stove and sit by the fire, I think about how close I came to giving it up, how close I came to letting fear and pressure push me out. But I didn't. I stood my ground. So, if you're listening to this, maybe the story isn't just about one man in his cabin. Maybe it's about you too. About finding your own quiet place, whatever that means. Maybe it's not a cabin in the snow. Maybe it's just saying no to something that doesn't feel right. Standing up for yourself, even when it's easier to give in. Because sometimes, the world will tell you you're wrong just because you're different. But difference isn't defiance. It's freedom. The HOA called the cops on my snow cabin because they couldn't control it. But what they didn't know was that my cabin sat on federal forest land. That belonged to everyone and no one at the same time. And maybe that's the greatest lesson of all. Not everything needs to be owned, painted, or managed. Some things just need to be left alone to exist, quietly and beautifully. When the last snow melted that spring, I built a small wooden sign at the edge of the trail. It didn't say keep out or private property. It said just 3 words, welcome to freedom. And that's where I've been ever since, living breathing, building, and remembering that peace doesn't come from power. It comes from letting go. This is Daniel Hayes. And that was the story of the snow cabin that no rulebook could touch. Thank you for watching Silent Stories Updates, where every story reminds us that the quietest moments often hold the loudest truths. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more real, emotional stories that stay with you long after they end.